In Persuasion, Jane Austen's final completed novel, Lady Russell occupies a complex moral and emotional position. She is both a loving guardian and a misguided counselor, representing the conflict between prudence and passion, reason and feeling, social status and personal happiness. As the close friend of the late Lady Elliot and a surrogate mother to Anne, Lady Russell plays an influential, if flawed, role in shaping the heroine's destiny. Through her, Austen examines the tension between affection and authority, the limitations of well-meaning advice, and the shifting moral landscape of Regency England. Lady Russell thus functions not merely as a secondary character, but as an ethical touchstone and symbolic mediator between old-world values and the emerging ethics of personal authenticity. Role in the narrative. Lady Russell's narrative importance lies primarily in her role as an Elliot's confidant and advisor, as well as in her indirect role as the cause of Anne's early sorrow. 8 years before the main events of the novel, it is Lady Russell who persuades the 19-year-old and to break off her engagement with Captain Frederick Wentworth, a young naval officer then lacking fortune or social rank. Her intervention, though motivated by affection and prudence, sets in motion the emotional distance and regret that shape much of Anne's life. In this sense, Lady Russell is both a moral influence and a narrative catalyst, representing the persuasion of the title in its most literal and symbolic meaning. At the beginning of the novel, Lady Russell remains deeply attached to the Elliots, particularly to Anne, whom she loves as her own daughter. Her affection is sincere, but it is guided by the rigid assumptions of class and decorum that define her worldview. She values respectability, stability, and social order above romantic passion. Thus, her original opposition to Wentworth, based on his uncertain prospects and inferior birth, reflects not malice but the prevailing wisdom of her generation. In the present action of the novel, Lady Russell continues to exert influence over Anne's social decisions, though her advice becomes increasingly outdated and misplaced. She encourages Anne to renew acquaintance with her father's vain circle, and remains wary of the rising naval class represented by the Crofts and Captain Wentworth. Yet, as the story unfolds, Lady Russell's limitations become evident. Her failure to perceive the worth of characters like Wentworth and Mrs. Croft contrasts sharply with Anne's moral insight and emotional intelligence. By the end of the novel, Lady Russell's perspective begins to soften. Her eventual acceptance of Wentworth and her acknowledgement that she had been prejudiced and unjust mark not only personal humility, but also the novel's moral reconciliation. Symbolic significance. Symbolically, Lady Russell represents the voice of conventional morality and the older aristocratic order that is slowly yielding to new values. She belongs to a generation that equates virtue with decorum, prudence, and adherence to social hierarchy. Her well-bred caution mirrors the genteel stability of the pre-war landed gentry, a world increasingly challenged by merit, mobility, and emotional authenticity. In this way, she serves as an emblem of the moral system that Persuasion simultaneously respects and critiques. Lady Russell is the moral face of traditionalism, not its caricature. Yet Austen exposes how even the most benevolent traditional values can become restrictive when untempered by empathy or self-knowledge. Lady Russell's rational persuasion fails because it ignores the moral truth that love and constancy, not status or wealth, are the proper measures of worth. Thus, she symbolizes the tension between social propriety and personal feeling, a central theme in Austen's moral vision. In a broader symbolic sense, Lady Russell also represents the power and limits of female influence in a patriarchal society. Deprived of formal authority, women like her wield moral persuasion as their chief instrument of control. Her well-intentioned manipulation of Anne's choices illustrates how social structures confine women to indirect modes of power, persuasion rather than decision. Through her, Austen critiques a culture that trains women to prioritize respectability over self-knowledge. Broader implications. Lady Russell's character allows Austen to explore the social and moral transformations of early 19th century England. The world of Persuasion is one in transition. Naval officers rise through merit, wealth shifts from inheritance to achievement, and women begin to assert emotional independence. Within this context, Lady Russell's values, rooted in stability, lineage, and decorum, appear both admirable and outdated. She embodies a fading order, Yet her sincerity makes her part of the novel's moral evolution rather than its villainy. Her relationship with, and also illuminates Austen's nuanced treatment of female mentorship and generational conflict. Lady Russell's influence is loving but flawed. She demonstrates how maternal figures, even the most affectionate ones, can become obstacles to self-realization when guided by social prejudice rather than moral imagination. Anne's journey toward autonomy involves not rejecting Lady Russell's affection, but transcending her authority. This progression, from filial dependence to moral self-reliance, reflects Austen's broader theme of internal persuasion, the triumph of conscience over conformity. Moreover, Lady Russell's character contributes to the novel's meditation on moral education. Her eventual recognition of Wentworth's worth and her repentance for past misjudgments show that moral growth is possible even for those shaped by rigid convention. In this sense, she embodies Austen's faith in the capacity for reform. Finally, Lady Russell functions as a moral counterpoint to the empty vanity of Sir Walter and Elizabeth Elliot. Where they are absorbed in self-image, she at least possesses sincerity and judgment, however flawed. Her concern for Anne's happiness, though misplaced, springs from genuine affection rather than selfishness. Thus, Austen tempers her critique with compassion, presenting Lady Russell as a figure of moral error rather than moral corruption. Conclusion. Lady Russell is one of Jane Austen's most intricately drawn moral figures, both a guardian and a hindrance, a product of her time yet capable of growth. In the narrative, she serves as the voice of caution and convention, whose persuasion shapes Anne's destiny and embodies the moral tension at the heart of the novel. Symbolically, she represents the genteel values of the older aristocratic world: decorum, prudence, and social rank. Yet her errors reveal the limitations of these virtues when detached from emotional insight and authenticity. Through Lady Russell, Austen explores the evolution of moral consciousness, the gradual shift from obedience to self-trust, from external persuasion to inner conviction. Her reconciliation with Anne and Wentworth at the end signifies not the triumph of passion over prudence, but the harmonizing of feeling and judgment. In the end, Lady Russell remains a deeply humane figure, flawed but redeemable, cautious yet capable of change. She embodies Austen's most enduring moral insight: that even the best intentions must be tempered by humility, and that true wisdom lies not in persuasion, but in the willingness to learn and to love rightly.